Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another map analysis video, bringing you a bit more of a structured video this time around compared to the VODs that I've published up until this point. Did want to shout out the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/semipronago. That is spelled the same exact way as this channel name here. Check it out in a link in the description. Give it a follow. If you're interested in this kind of content, but having it be done live, I mean, obviously it's a different style, but it's the same kind of thing. So you can check that out there. Today we're going to be looking at Pripyat, which is by Confused Travolta. I'm sure he has a Russian name as well. This is a defuse map. However, I would argue it should probably be played like 6v6 or 7v7 or something. This is one of the original maps that we played with the massive numbers of bots that we like to play on the game nights, which are done every Saturday. I'll have a link in the Discord server in the description of this video as well if you want to get in on those. We always play custom maps with an obscene number of bots on the enemy team. And, I mean, if that sounds like a good time to you, then feel free to hop in. Aside from that, besides being a big team battle type map that allows us to really experience this map in full, I did want to mention, though, that obviously that leaves us in a very different position from analyzing it compared to normal maps where we're just playing 5v5. I don't know if this map is too big or not, but I will say that there are a ton of angles, and it will take a long time to memorize all of the different angles and learn them all in a situation where maybe you don't want to be putting all of that effort into a custom map in the same way, especially if it's not in the map pool. I'm not sure if thematically it would be restricted by Valve. If you haven't listened to some of my Hammer Meat Anvil interviews with mappers, then you may not be aware that Valve actually has thematic restrictions. Some of them seem obvious on their face, like you can't have maps themed after anything Chinese, I think, as well as anything to do with sites of real-life terrorist attacks. And then there's there's a couple of other thematic restrictions. I think in general they haven't ever picked any really abstract stuff. The closest they've come is like Lunacy, which is an official map, which is obviously a movie set, not actually a space station or moon base or anything like that, which is rather unfortunate because that would be epic. And yeah, ultimately, as a result, they might not ever have considered this map anyway. But I think visually it's okay. Certainly could use a facelift. It's a bit of an older map. And size-wise is probably the biggest concern, specification-wise, you know. But that being said, I do think that there's a lot of value in the gameplay here, and there should be a decent amount of value to our analysis of it as well. So, here we are. We are in T-spawn. Now, for most maps, if they have like a 3-lane or something close to a 3-lane setup, as a T spawning in, you'll have like 3 or 4 different directions that you can go. Before we even walk down any of them, though, I should count all of the directions you can go. And I'm counting this giant left flank area over there as the same thing as going here, but with a catch. So we can go to B through essentially 3 different areas. We can go into this room over here, which takes us into a flank. We can go out here, which is like the same level thing. And then we can go over here, out in this burned house. You can also take mid control by going through this door. So that's kind of like 4, because that's a mid to B connector. We can go to mid through essentially 3 passageways. There's the one from the B connector that I showed off earlier. There's this left door with the green background that I was just about to go into. And then there's taking it from this A thing over there. There's a nice little door into mid from the T's perspective as well, if we go into the A door. And we can go to A through that A door, as we were just showing. We can jump over here, or we can take the very far approach. It's a bit safer, gives us a bit more cover coming out, which is over here. And then once we're over here, we can also go up that ladder to go to A, or we can go up here. So at every single point in this map, you have more and more options opening up to you. It's almost like, it's not exactly fractal, but it kind of reminds me of something like that. So we are going to try and simplify this and just walk through the whole map before even really spending too much time on individual notes. This is something that I've been trying to do more often anyway, but this map demands it because there are so many different things that you've got to keep in mind. So this is a very long flank path. At first, you might be tempted to say, why does this exist? Remove it. But I want to encourage you to remember CT spawn on Inferno, where you can actually choose to rotate loudly and quickly, or silently and slowly. And you do so without actually having to shift walk through the same passageway. That's the added complexity and the depth that you get as a benefit from having positions like this. Now, at the same time, I don't necessarily think that anybody would be positioned to hear footsteps out here in a post-plant scenario, but they could be. And especially if there's a team who's preparing to take B and somebody's managed to push through A, this is a very, very viable and alluring option for somebody to lurk and flank through. So that's something else to consider. I do actually really like the inclusion of this, and I think it does add a little something, a little bit of depth that I do wish more maps had. Not necessarily saying they all have to be as big as this, but I think maps, generally speaking, do need a bit of extra decision-making in some cases. Most of the official maps already have all of that decision-making available to you, but some of the user-made maps that we've seen, that we've been reviewing for the Wingman contest on stream and stuff, they are missing a little bit in the terms of decision-making. And some of the best ones that we've seen so far have had a lot of that decision-making in spades. So a little bit of a brief analysis on that point. Now we can continue on this very long and roundabout flank path, and we can go left, and this will take us into essentially what I like to call the Pripyat place, where you just rush B. This is the rush B, like waterfall out of apartments, similar kind of thing on Mirage. That's the same kind of thing that you're going to be doing if you run out there. It's a safe position to take from a low-buy perspective. If you got a lot of pistols, SMGs, shotguns, whatever, that's a position where you kind of want to be leaning towards, because to come out over here, if you just take the more conventional routes, you can come out over here and all of a sudden, here you are and you're staring down the barrel of an op that's going to be posted up over there. Or some rifles that could be posted up there, or on the site somewhere. There's just a lot more angles to clear from this angle. So, as a result, you got to be wary of that. You kind of have to be a bit more coordinated with other parts of the map, and a rush out of that area is just not going to be as efficient. So if you're trying to rush, if you're trying to change up the pace, this is like the most telegraphed option for you, the most common and the most alluring option for you in that sense. So that would be something that I would just levy initially. That being said, you can also very easily, because of this little connector over here, afford to have like 3 or 4 people go into this washing machine room, this laundromat, whatever that is, and 1 or 2 people come out here, or 1 person come out here and 1 person come out over here by the truck and pincer the site that way. Or you could even do 2 into the laundromat, 1 here, and 1 coming out over here to try to pincer the site from there. Really, one of the things that sets Pripyat apart, in my opinion, from other defuse maps, is that it allows the Ts, and as a result the CTs as well, to almost conceptualize each individual bomb site, each of the 2 bomb sites, as a 2 bomb site defuse map unto themselves. Not in the sense that you're trying to take multiple objectives, but that you can isolate this large map into like 2 smaller maps, basically. And I think that's really cool. I think that's something that not a whole lot of other maps try, because it is a very high-scale thing. It's something that you're not really going to be able to do in a lower-scale environment, but something that I think is at least a worthy experiment. And like I said, you might have more luck with this map as a 6v6. The reason why 6v6 isn't usually tried anymore on the default defuse maps is precisely because more numbers favors the CTs, the defensive team, because trading matters a bit less, and lower numbers obviously favor the CTs, the aggressive team, because trading means more. So, under such circumstances, you do have to wonder what kind of world would we live in if this map was played 6v6, and if we had like a set of maps that were big enough to warrant 6v6 or greater in terms of numbers. But I digress. Let's move on from the B-bomb site, at least take a look at the CT positions real quick before we do. Like I said, this is like the op angle. You're going to be in a position where you've got this line of sight over here on anybody coming out. You can also decide to reposition yourself to hold on over here, which is obviously going to be pretty useful. And then you can also take a look at the Rush B area from either here on the crate or not. On the site itself, and especially for post plants and stuff, I'm not 100% sure what the angles would look like. I think you would have to figure out where the team is going to likely rotate from and isolate those angles, just because there's so many different ones. If you decided to rush B or lurk out B, and you somehow, as a team, manage to get over here, you will eventually run into CT spawn if you keep running this way. Another weird thing that I have not actually found a lot of use for myself is that you can sort of... this is a full crouch the whole way, so you can't move very fast, and you have no cover when you do drop down besides this, but this is something that I guess you could see working out in some reality somewhere as like a drop down for a defuse or something. Not 100% sure what that would look like, but you're super exposed if you decide to go that way. Let's move on to CT. We'll check out mid, and then we'll check out the A-bomb site. When CTs spawn, you're going to see a helicopter over here, so don't be alarmed about that. Or do be. I guess you can shoot it or whatever. I'm not your boss. But this little rusted out, blown out nuclear winter playground area is pretty cool, I guess. Pretty thematic. One of the things that I will say about this map's art direction, despite the fact that the textures themselves seem a little dated in some places, the abundance of graffiti and customized 2D art, it feels pretty cool looking at it from a player's perspective, because it does feel lived in. It does feel worldly. It feels like there was actual effort put into that, and that's something that I can get behind. So this is the mid sort of rotation area. You're going to be around this position as a CT, while the Ts are around this position as Ts. So let's take a look at that from the T's perspective. T comes out over here, and they decide to choose to go into the green room rather than the red room. They're going to run out here towards mid. Some more graffiti. And they're going to be around here, maybe even closer towards the door, when the CTs are reaching over here as well. So this is pretty even as far as the timing thing goes. Might favor one team or another based on spawns a little bit more. You can jump up on this prop from train, this electrical box or whatever it is, and you can also get a line of sight over here, which takes you all the way to the truck, which can be incredibly useful, but obviously very risky because you're super exposed to anybody lurking through the A side of the map, or anybody obviously lurking through mid, either in that position over there from T-spawn, or in this position over here from the A connector. So you got to be cognizant of that as well. You may have noticed that there's this door over here that leads you into a little amphitheater area, and then this little side room that leads you into the other amphitheater area, which is also the A connector. So the A connector, from the perspective of the T's, you're going to come in here. I don't even know what you would call this. The call out is main hall. So A hall, I guess. A hall will lead you out into mid. And you can take fights over here from the position of A connector as you're coming out. Obviously, some cases where the CTs themselves, I think the timing favors T's on this peak, just because. But this piece of cover here is super bangable. It's just wood, obviously. So while the T's can get out here and be pre-aiming you from a different angle, you can, in theory, leverage a good spawn and make that happen over there. Obviously, utility galore. I would expect a lot of positions like that to be smoked out in some way or another to allow the T's to take more map control. There's a pretty cool flash you can do from B to isolate some more mid control. I don't actually have a 100% accurate lineup or something that's super reproducible, but in a position where you're over here, that will full blind anybody who's holding this angle. Even if they're like holding this angle flush, or not very flush, I guess, distant as they can be. So something like that will work. You just have to have somebody who's lurking towards B who wants to throw that flash for you, maybe double to guarantee the blind. And notably, I don't think that would actually blind you if you were popping out as a T. Like, maybe even if I'm over here. That does blind me for a second, right? So I could run out after the first one. Like, yeah, something like that could work out. If you didn't hear the audio cues, it's, I don't know, I guess you're deaf or something. But yeah, those audio cues would give you a lot in that situation. So I think it could work out pretty well. We're going to jump over to A from the T's perspective as well now. We're not going to go through A connector, but I'll show you where that comes out. There's two different areas that you can go to from A. You can choose to jump over this fridge or whatever the fuck that is. You can choose to go all the way over here the long route. I don't personally know what the significance of that is, besides maybe allowing a rush to happen and maybe getting out a little bit earlier to take cover behind some of this stuff. I definitely don't see the purpose of this shelf over here, besides to remind us that clipping is super easy to happen in 3D games for some reason. But you can take this ladder up here if you've established enough control to get to it. This is another reason why you want to prioritize some A connector control, because you can actually pop out here, and unless the CTs are in super aggro positions, they aren't going to be in a position to spot you. So notably, as a CT coming up here to this elevated position, you have the power to take a look at some lines of sight here. I'll place a couple just for reference. And this is from the back area. There's a ladder over here that can get you up there. Now you can also choose to play a more defensive position, but your line of sight is such that you're going to have to wait for the T's to come to you. You will have line of sight, I guess, just from this angle. Pretty sure that that is something that where you would have line of sight of anybody who's like standing on the van. But I mean, you're so exposed at that angle, I would never want to stand on the van personally. So I don't know why anybody would do that. But this is essentially the A bomb site. Now, notably, in order to plant, right? I didn't talk about the plant area on B. I'll look at that in a second. In order to plant, you actually do have to be around this, like on the lowest part. You can't be on the slope part, really. And apparently, you can't be at the farthest most right side area. And you cannot plant on any of the props either, which is kind of unfortunate, but that's fine. Then you've got the ladder over here. Got this little fucking, I don't even know what you would call this. This is like modern art. You know what I mean? That is not gameplay space, so even if you had a boost or something, I don't think you'd be able to make it over there. You can boost up here if you wanted to, in a post-plant scenario or something. And this is where the ladder will take you out. So you'll come up the ladder after hugging the A connector, and you'll completely bypass any CT line of sight that's checking for a more conventional A-side rotation, which is one of the reasons why A connector is so valuable. You can then choose to run all the way down or just waterfall out onto the site itself. Now, notably, that's essentially it. That's all you can choose to do. If you end up getting down here and you've taken control, your options open up quite a bit more. We'll show off the CT perspective here. So from CT's perspective, you can go here just straight onto the site. You can go here to get to the amphitheater, and then you can decide either going out mid or going out to the A connector to contest. This is where we threw the smoke earlier. Then the CTs can also decide, once they go A, to either go onto the site or take a right to fast track their way to a little bit more of a forward position. Now, at the same time, if you choose to go onto the site, you can then take a left to go straight for the ladder to go up, right? This also links up to the amphitheater over here that will lead you out to mid. So you can also choose to go up there by going here. And this is another reason why mid control is so important, because T Lurker can run in here, well, walk in here and backstab the A hold. So you have to have a lot of people. This is one of the reasons why, like I was saying earlier, I don't know if that this map necessarily makes sense in a 5v5 context. There's a lot to keep track of. But that complexity will breed a decent number of post plants and interesting rotations. CSGO's rule set might need to be tweaked beyond just allowing an extra player on each team or something. Maybe you make the bomb timer longer or something to that effect, the round timer longer, just because the map is bigger. These are all things that we might need to do if we wanted to really enjoy this map to the fullest extent. Like I said, it might not be out of the box suited for 5v5. That doesn't mean that I'm saying it's not a good map or not a map that I would want to play 5v5. I think it could still be really interesting. The bomb plant area is a rough square around the B car. I'm not actually sure why we're bombing the car, to be honest with you, but we are. I guess we're actually bombing these missiles. It's always missiles, man. It's always some weapons cache. You can self-boost your own man, your own self, into very interesting positions on this map, generally speaking. That's another thing that's really positive about this map, is all the movement potential that it offers. Post plants, like I was saying, not 100% sure about that one. If we go back to the A-bomb site real quick, and the only way to get there quickly is to no-clip, let's be real. I think once you plant the bomb, it depends on where you've planted it for. This is something that I try to think about all the time, even when I'm first looking at a map for the first time, is where would I plant to then hold for any diffuser? And I think the most powerful spot, that's like the most versatile spot, would probably be something like this, because then I can grab it from here if I lurk out here, or even if I just go here. So like if I plant next to the ladder down there, I should be able to shoot somebody either through the floor or not. I can also get it relatively easily with a Molotov lineup if I just like right click and run. That will land roughly in the area. I mean, obviously you could probably get an actual lineup if you tried hard enough. Oh, well. Not actually sure. I guess it does do that, but I don't know if it would spread reliably to all of the different positions that you could defuse from. So. Not 100% sure what a lineup would look like that would bounce down and actually explode. I'm sure there's something that exists somewhere. There you go. There's your lineup right there. So you plant back here, and you throw that. Good luck, dude. So yeah, there's those are some situations that you might want to take a look at for post plants. I think utility would be really useful on this map once people figured it out. I think boosting is a really underrated strategy on this map as well, from the maps that or the rounds that I've played on it. And I think there's only a few post plants that are actually reasonably viable, unfortunately. But in terms of like calculated angles and holding and making the CTs walk in. But at the same time, that's where you establish crossfires just the same way that you would want to hold the site. I think this map, because of its size, because of the number of angles you've got to isolate, might actually have more people doing playing one of the sites retake and the other one's stacked, depending on what their personal preference is. So from a CT perspective, you would hold crossfires a lot, maybe in mid. Maybe you'd have like a mid-centric setup with 1A and 1B. And then like one would be, say your A player is holding over here, right? So he's going to hold over here probably with an op, if I had to guess. Oops, I accidentally threw my grenade again. So he's going to hold out here with an op. Notably, he cannot see any of that from this angle, right? So he's going to just hold the simplest angle with an op. The safest angle with an op, right? And he's going to fall back if he needs to. Something like this, right? He'll try to catch anybody who's coming out, and then he'll run back. He does have the opportunity to call for backup, because he can get anybody who's holding the, like, again, you'd have like a rifler over here, and the rifler would be holding something like this, and they would see if they're coming to mid from A, and he'd also be able to listen for info, and maybe like take some peeks. And that's probably how that would look. Then you'd have another opper, so you'd have double op set up. Another opper would probably be in B window, or just in this B backhaul area, and he would either be holding for over here and isolate this angle, or he might be over here isolating this angle. And then you'd have... I'm actually not sure which one is safer. I think not being in this window area is probably safer, just because it stops you from... Like, you still have the opportunity to run back, right? So maybe he might even be even more passive like this, so that he can take a shot and then fall back over here, and hopefully not be rushed down by anybody coming out in this area. Because again, I'm imagining a 1A, 1B, and 3 in the mid region in general. So you'd have like one dedicated rifler over here, who's like playing around this E-box over here somehow. Like he'll maybe he's taking a fight like this. If he gets a spawn for it, he might try to like run down over here, and then like sort of just be annoying in this underpass area. And then otherwise he might be playing a safe angle as well. And then you'd have a B guy who's probably the move that the B rifler probably comes out to do. He probably just runs full frontal over here, or like takes a position maybe behind this box and then holds for anybody coming out over there. Like maybe he Molotovs it first, just to make sure that they aren't able to quickly come out. And then after he does that, he might like push up over here, well, probably shift walking, push up over here to take an angle as a crossfire with his opper. But he can quickly rotate out again as well. And the idea is you try to play for that first pick, but you try to also be able to be passive enough to fall back so that you can retake a site. And that's why I think maybe the bomb timer being 45 seconds might be a bit low for a map like this. Also, you can do epic things like this. Pretty cool, huh? So anyway, I can't even begin to really unwrap the strategies that you might be able to do on a map that's this big, that's got this many angles, it's got this many possibilities. But I do appreciate that it experimented with a larger scale than what CS is used to. And I've personally had a ton of fun on it. And even if it doesn't work in 5v5, or even if people write it off as not working in 5v5, I think there's a lot of fun to be had with big team battle stuff. And I hope that we see more maps that are sort of like this in scale, at the very least. Do I think some areas could be simplified? Yeah. And obviously, like I said earlier, the art isn't 100% great in terms of objective quality. The texture detail could definitely be a bit higher, and other things like that could be done better. But thematically, I think it delivers. It's not so crowded and cluttered that it's impossible to see. Visibility is usually okay, although this was made years and years before the custom player models and characters came out, the skins came out. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's some bullshit that would need to be adjusted or addressed. And I think that will do it for our analysis of this particular map. So hope you enjoyed. Hope you feel encouraged to check it out. And maybe the guy who made this will see it, that confused Travolta guy, and he'll be even more confused than normal. We'll see. Obviously, I'll see you guys in the next couple of map analysis videos that I'm putting out, and maybe on the stream as well. Once again, twitch.tv/semipronago. And yeah, Discord link in the description as well if you want to pop in for some CS games every Saturday. All right. Bye.